The United States has recently escalated its forceful interventions in global politics. Following the alleged kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and the reported killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Iran, Washington now appears to be focusing its attention on Cuba. However, this time, the strategy might be different. For months, United States President Donald Trump has frequently spoken about Cuba, stating, "I can do what I want with it." He has expressed a desire to take over or free the island, promising swift action. "We will do something in Cuba very soon," President Trump announced recently. It is no secret that the White House aims to restructure Cuba's political leadership, much like its efforts in Venezuela and Iran. Yet, a direct military intervention by the United States might be avoided this time. The current calculation seems to be to maintain economic pressure on the island nation until it voluntarily complies with Washington's demands. The United States has already found an effective tool in dealing with the communist and authoritarian-led island. After intervening in Venezuela, the United States government cut off Cuba's oil supply from the South American country, which was previously Cuba's primary energy provider. Additionally, the United States has threatened other nations with punitive tariffs if they continue to supply oil to Cuba. As a result, Mexico, Cuba's second most important supplier, has also halted its exports. The oil shortage is now evident across Cuba. Recently, the entire island experienced its second power outage of the year. State-subsidized staple foods are reportedly scarce. Hospitals and waste collection services have also reduced their operations due to the lack of fuel. Public discontent is rising, culminating in protesters attacking the Communist Party headquarters late last week. The Cuban leadership, which has been hostile toward the United States since the Castro Revolution in 1959, has attempted to revive the country's economy. The current President Miguel DA-az-Canel spoke of immediate reforms in economic and social policy just 2 weeks ago. Consequently, Cuba's Minister of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investment, Oscar Pérez Oliva Fraga, announced that the country would permit investments from exiled Cubans and was open to trade with the United States. However, the American government has shown no interest in this, as an embargo against the island has been in place since 1960, effectively preventing trade relations. This situation, however, might be changing. Both sides have reportedly been engaged in direct negotiations for months, with the Cuban side officially confirming the talks last Friday. Leading the United States delegation is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a 54-year-old who is the child of Cuban exiles. On Tuesday, he expressed dissatisfaction with the progress, stating, "They must change dramatically." Rubio highlighted 2 areas needing improvement: Cuba's economy, which he described as dysfunctional and historically dependent on foreign subsidies from the Soviet Union and later Venezuela. He deemed Cuba's recently announced reforms insufficient. Furthermore, the United States is apparently unhappy with Cuba's current leaders. "They must bring new people into responsibility," Rubio demanded. A report on Monday revealed Washington's central demand: the resignation or removal of Cuban President Diaz-Canel. 4 sources familiar with the negotiations confirmed this, noting that while the United States would leave the concrete procedure to Cuba, no agreement could be reached as long as President Diaz-Canel remained in office. Diaz-Canel, who has led the country since 2018, is the first head of state not from the Castro family since the 1959 revolution. His term officially runs until 2028. Interestingly, the United States government has not demanded the ousting of the still influential Castro family. This is perhaps why Guillermo RodrA-guez Castro, known as Raulito, the grandson of former President Raúl Castro, is reportedly the chief Cuban negotiator and Rubio's direct contact. This approach, avoiding the complete upheaval of power structures, aligns with President Trump's broader foreign policy strategy. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton noted that Trump often cautioned against a scenario like Iraq, where the United States struggled to establish stable governance after the fall of Saddam Hussein. In his first term, Trump reportedly hesitated to attack Iran for this reason. However, in his second term, large military interventions are no longer an obstacle, as seen with Venezuela and Iran. Yet for Cuba, military action remains unlikely for now. The United States had deployed a military threat off the Venezuelan coast before Maduro's kidnapping, but large parts of those forces have since been redeployed to the Middle East. To assemble a similar presence near Cuba would require drawing forces from the Middle East, where they are heavily engaged in the war in Iran. President Trump continues to leave open how long the Iran conflict will last and if ground troops will be deployed. Another military intervention could also cost Trump additional trust among American voters. The intervention in Venezuela was unpopular, and the attack on Iran reportedly saw the lowest public support in the United States since the Second World War. War is also expensive. A think tank estimates the United States spends nearly $900 million per day on the Iran war, a cost Americans feel directly through rising gasoline prices. While President DA-az-Canel is not entirely undisputed within Cuba, with Cuban negotiators acknowledging his term has been problematic, they emphasize that it must not appear as if the United States government dictated how Cuba handles its president. These conditions suggest that the United States may achieve its goals in Cuba without military intervention. A military intervention is currently considered improbable, a scenario that likely suits President Trump given the current global engagements and domestic political considerations. What's your take on US demands Cuban president out amid economic crisis? Share your view in the comments. Do you think this will matter in the next news cycle? This video was generated using artificial intelligence.